and welcome to Worried About Nothing. Today we figured we'd talk about the Freedom March that Kim attended yesterday and just see how it goes. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Kim.
And welcome to our show. So Kim, I'm going to pass it right off to you since you attended the march and I know nothing about it, nearly nothing about it. So how was it?
Oh, it was amazing. It was, I think it was a global one again, but I didn't see as many posts this time as the one on the 15th where there were just posts, marches all over the world. I did see there was one in Australia as well. This one, I believe, was the biggest one in London to date. I heard different figures for how many people attended, but it was between 1 million and 1.5 million people marched the streets of London, and we shut down the centre of London and West London completely. You probably don't know London, well, you probably know it better than I do actually, but but some of the central streets are, they're 4 lanes, so it's like double lanes going each way. We just shut them all down. It's just people marching, people walking, closing entire streets down. And it was just amazing. It was an incredible experience. They're building more and more. And it was just, it's very hard to describe, but it was a very moving experience. And it was just so full of love. It was people who are doing this for love. All of the signs were very, very personal that I saw, and there were things like, I'm doing this for my children, so they have a choice. And there was one lady, she was a really sweet little old granny. And she'd done a little sign she was holding, and she said, I'm fighting for my grandkids' future. And that was just so moving. When I saw it, I started crying because it was just so beautiful. Because she was holding it, she was really quite frail or quite slim, and she was pretty elderly. But she's marching along because she's thinking about her grandchild, and I just tears. It was just, and so many of the signs were like that. It was all about, I'm doing this for the love of my family. I'm doing this for the love of my kids. I'm doing this for the love of my parents. It's all about love. And there were signs that said, my favorite one that was at the last one as well, love wins, and then other signs saying, love, not fear, and love is our resistance. And it was all about love. There was no kind of aggression or accusation or anger or anything sharp. It was all about love and spreading the message of love, and it was so beautiful. And there were people with loudspeakers, and people amazingly they're so equipped with music, they came with these massive speakers, on trolleys, and some people were really dressed up for it as well. It was fantastic. It was like a real kind of, carnival atmosphere. So there's all sorts of music playing, and it was, songs about freedom. And then there's that song that I only have heard at marches, but it's all about, I can't remember his name again. But there's this guy who's recorded a song. He basically says, telling everyone not to take the vaccine. So it's, mothers don't take the vaccine, children don't take the vaccine. And people just kept playing that over and over and singing it as well, And people with loudspeakers were shouting at the people that were on the pavements. And it was just so nice because we shut down traffic for, it was, I think the whole procession was about a mile long. We shut down traffic, and all of the drivers were so supportive. I didn't see one that was kind of glaring or annoyed, A lot of them were beeping their horns, and they were kind of like, solidarity, waving at us out the window and clapping and stuff. And bus drivers, I did feel a bit sorry for some of the drivers because people had all these stickers and they were sticking them all over the windscreens, and the drivers were kind of like, okay, I can't see now, but that's okay. It's like, maybe leave a little gap so we can see where he's going, love, But it was just amazing. And there was a police presence there, but they were kind of kept on their toes because this march was different to any other one that's been. It was a different route, and it was longer. I think it was about 13 miles long.
Wow.
And it felt like we were marching to Australia. It was kind of like 5 hours later, we were like, yep, still marching, But the police kind of had to march with us because they didn't know where we were going, because we didn't know where we were going. We weren't told. So instead of being able to kind of set vans up to block us or to be at the end, they had to come with us. So we're just walking down the street with all these cops, and everyone's chatting away to them, And we passed this convent, and this was amazing. And there were these nuns that came out, and they started cheering us. And, they kept kind of, doing thumbs up and stuff, and everyone was cheering them. And it was quite funny because as we came up to the convent, we were all shouting, freedom, freedom, and then people at the front spotted the nuns and started going, free the nuns, free the nuns, free the nuns, until the whole crowd was screaming, free the nuns.
As if they're not there of their own volition.
But they loved it. They thought it was so funny. But then people were talking to the nuns, and this woman posted a video that she recorded of one of the nuns, and she was amazing. She was really sweet. And she just said, good for you. This is absolutely fantastic. You know, you were all born free in the image of God. Don't let anyone take away your freedom. And then she said that since January this year, they've had to pray for 50 people who were dying or near death because of the vaccine. And it was like, oh my God, you know, that's concrete numbers from people who get asked to pray for people who are sick or dying. And she said, that is just unprecedented. Last year we had one, which since January, which is not long, they've had 50 requests, and that's just shocking. And so she was saying, you know, carry on with what you're doing. We fully support you. It's absolutely amazing, you know. And it was brilliant. It was that kind of atmosphere. It was just people were talking to everybody on the street. Loads of shopkeepers came out and they were applauding. People were leaning out of windows and waving. And so we're all kind of waving on both sides, you know. And you just chatted to everybody. It was a really kind of like a carnival atmosphere in a way, but it was just so moving in so many different ways, not just because of the people marching for personal reasons, but just because people really wanted everyone to hear the message, you know. And it wasn't in a kind of mostly not evangelical, you know, there was always one or two people who get a little bit carried away. But mostly it was just people saying, we want you to know the facts. And we walked down a different route because normally these marches just march around the centre of London. And we went to West London this time. And this had never happened before. So everyone was coming out on the streets going, oh my God, what's happening? What's going on? You know? And a lot of people were saying that they had conversations with other people there in West London, particularly, who were so appreciative that we made the effort to come to them. You know, but the funny thing was we kind of, because it was such a massive march, we'd stop every so often to let the people at the back catch up. And so we'd stop for 5-10 minutes and everyone would just sit down in the middle of the street, you know, in cars, in between cars and buses, you know, and the cops would be standing there going, not sure what we can do about this, you know. And every time they tried to move us, it was kind of like, well, there's 1.5 million people here, try, you know.
Wow.
But it was great. It was great. It really was. I mean, there were one or two people that were getting the cops started getting a little bit antsy with some people because there were one or two who were getting a bit aggressive in that kind of, they were right up in their faces and kind of pushing them and that kind of thing. So you can kind of understand where there was a bit of a pushback, but that didn't last very long. But the majority of people were just amazing. And it was just so lovely to see so many different people. It wasn't just kind of all hippies, or it just wasn't all just, you know, a certain type of person. There were all sorts of people. And it was a gorgeous day. The sun was shining, you know, and we're all kind of sweating and, you know, singing in the sun. And yeah, it was lovely. It was a very special day. And it just felt like, it just feels like this is building, you know, more and more people are agreeing with this, you know, and showing open support for it. So it wasn't just the marchers, because I've heard, because I didn't make the first couple of marches because I was working on the Saturday. It was always on a Saturday and I was working, but I've gone to the last two. And even since the last one, there's so much more support, you know, and people applauding, and the ones that stand there in masks looking horrified are kind of in the minority now, you know, but there were some. There's one group of, because it was a double road we were walking down. There was one group of women, they kind of got caught in the island in the middle. So we're walking around them and they looked terrified. They had masks on and they were going, oh my God, all these people. Because it was just a sea of people walking past them, all kind of, you know, touching them and shaking their hands and waving. And they were just going, oh.
Wow.
It was quite fun. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. And there was Professor Dolores Cahill was there, and all sorts of other people there. David Icke was there as well. And it was just everyone marching together, you know, shoulder to shoulder. It was brilliant. Really, really good day.
All right, I do have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
I know you said that they're growing, and I'm wondering if you have a sense as to why they're growing, because as you said, this one hasn't been as advertised. In my experience, the lockdowns, at least in the States, have been lifting more and more. So the fact that, maybe it's different in London. Do you have any sense, though, as to why they're growing now versus, at least here, we were more locked down before, so I'd be surprised to see something growing. I would think, people are like, things are easing up. We don't have to do this.
Yeah, good question. I don't know, really. I guess partly because of what we've discussed in previous podcasts, even the last one, I think maybe, where we were talking about how things are opening up more. And there just feels like there's such a shift, you know, so there is a sense now, I think, of solidarity, of that kind of, we are not alone in this. There's one woman that had a placard and it was amazing. It says, they want you to feel alone, but there are millions of us, with hearts on it. And that's really the sense of it, I feel. I mean, we talked about this last week, actually, about when we talked about the Facebook whistleblowers. You know, they want to isolate us and make us feel that we're the only ones that are weird, you know. But there really was such a sense that it was global, even if it wasn't global, I don't know. But there were so many of us all believing the same thing. And I don't know whether, because London has always been pretty cosmopolitan in the sense that it's open-minded and it's not really set in its ways, but it just seems to be spreading. I mean, more and more, this one particularly, so many people came from all over the country. You know, they traveled overnight to get to London. They slept in their cars. They met up with friends and family that they'd met online, you know, and it was just like this big kind of reunion. It was fantastic. And so, you know, when we all arrived, it was, we met at Parliament Square. It's like a roundabout and it's surrounded by streets. And so the middle section was filled, it was packed already. And just standing in the street and on the streets, you know, on the pavements around it. And all you could hear for the first, I don't know, half an hour was people going, "Oh my God, are you Bob? I follow you on Facebook." Or, "Oh wow, you're Jim. I love your posts," and all this kind of stuff. And it's just really showed that community that happens online, that you become friends even if you've never met in person. And when you do, it's like you're meeting your best mate. You know, it's not like a complete stranger. So that was lovely as well, you know, and everyone was just kind of passing things out. It's like people who'd made stickers were like, "Here, have some free stickers, you know, stick them on buses." Poor bus drivers. But you know, or sharing all sorts of stuff. And yeah, it was wonderful. It was amazing. I mean, the only thing I would say is that they had these you know, those smoke bombs that give coloured smoke, you know, that you sometimes see at parades and things like that. They had loads of those, and they were kind of partly to signal to us that something was happening. So it would kind of be like, this colour would be stop, or this colour would be whatever. But people kept holding them up, and all you could see was like, you know, red smoke for a while and green smoke for a while. And everyone in the crowd was kind of going, "Yeah, should we get our masks out now?"
It's maybe a good opportunity for them.
Yeah. Which is really funny. And then others were going, "But we don't have one. Do you have one?" "No, God, no." You know, it was very British humor. You know, it was fun. It was good.
That's actually kind of cool idea to be able to have that way of signaling to such a large crowd. Really cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, because the start signal was a firework. And yeah, as soon as that went off, oh my God, everyone suddenly was deafened because we all just started screaming, you know, and then just that moment of moving on, and, you know, we're starting to move, and it's just this huge wall of people. And we started walking down Whitehall, which is a really wide road, and it kind of leads Downing Street, you know, where the Prime Minister lives and, you know, functions in inverted commas. It's just kind of off it. And we were just all walking down there, and then we stopped outside Downing Street, and everyone was going, "Boo, boo," and shouting, "Shame on you." And it was just fantastic. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, just listening to you talk about it, the energy sounds amazing.
Really was. Yeah, really, really was.
So I was wondering if, as you're walking, were there people that kind of joined you? Did you notice any of that? Like, you're walking down the street and some people are like, "Oh, what is this going on?" Like, maybe didn't know what was happening and then they decided to come with you, or?
I don't know, not that I noticed, but I was kind of in the middle of the crowd as opposed to on the edges, so I'm not too sure. But there were a lot of people that were filming, like proper, you know, with professional cameras. So I was thinking, wow, are those news cameras? You don't know. Because we were actually mentioned in one of the mainstream media papers this morning, which has never happened before in this way, and that they actually talked about it. It wasn't just, 20 people gathered. You know, they actually said hundreds of thousands, which is, I don't think, enough, but still. And they mentioned what we were marching for, and they mentioned, you know, a couple of quotes from people that were interviewed, which was, you know, astonishing. They kind of twisted it slightly. It sort of, it was from the angle of, "Oh no, they were causing riots," because the end place was this shopping centre in West London. And I kind of stopped before we got to the shopping centre because, one, my feet were killing me. And secondly, I thought if we're all going to cram into the shopping centre, it's just going to be chaos, you know, and the police were starting to kind of come in a bit closer and closer and closer. So I just thought, okay, I'm done. I've been walking for 5 hours. I'm going home now. But apparently they went there and they were all chanting in the shopping centre. They shut it down completely. And they were setting off smoke bombs inside, which must have been horrendous, you know. But the papers were saying, "Oh, you know, all these anti-vax people came, and it was kind of, the implication was that we were hooligans and sort of trying to cause chaos in the shopping centre, and the police had to be called, and then everyone dispersed. And it's like, no, the police have been with us for 5 hours. They weren't just called. They're all red-faced and sweating too. But at least it was mentioned, which was good.
Yeah, in a sense, I feel like it might be a nod to us talking about how things are opening up. And also, a march that big, you can't cover up completely. People will be like, why isn't it in the paper? So maybe that's also a way of them, well, let's cover it, but we'll cover it in our way. So, because people definitely noticed something was going on, right?
Definitely.
It would be like, how was this not being reported on otherwise? Yeah. So that's pretty cool. It feels really good just to hear about it. So that's quite amazing. I love how you were sharing that you guys ended up marching through a different area and talking with other people, and they were appreciative of you being in that area. I thought that was so cool, and I think it's a really great idea, because often these rallies, I think, are held in the same places over and over again. So it might be that people who like, sometimes I think they're up in Albany for me. That's 2 hours away. That's not that it wouldn't be worth the investment for me to go, but for me to go by myself, like that sort of thing, I'm like, I don't know. It just hasn't really felt like the proper thing to do. So I think it'd be cool because, of course, if a march came through my area, I'd probably join it. Or if it was held closer to me, it's, I would go to it. So that's pretty cool. And you get more people that to know, right? These conversations start and they're like, oh, thanks for letting me know. I don't hear about these things or whatever. So.
And people did join later as well, because there were a lot of Telegram conversations, and people were posting our location, and people were saying, yeah, I'm going to join at 1:30, I'm going to join at 2, I'll see you at 3, where are you going to be? And it was all just, people just fluidly joining the huge sea of people, and I'm sure people left as well, because was a long walk. but but as people left, more people joined, so kept up the numbers.
Really, really cool. And I was wondering, because sure, the mainstream news outlets are going to do their little bits of coverage, but is there a place where these posts are kind of being aggregated? So if people who couldn't attend, or people who are interested in seeing what's going on in London specifically, like, can they go view these posts somewhere, like the one of the nun that you spoke of?
Yes, well, everyone, I posted it on my personal Facebook page, so everyone's welcome to see it there. But also, it's there are a number of different groups that are specifically just for these marches, and there are a number of different ones. I'll post them actually underneath, and I might post that video of the nun as well, because it was just lovely. It was just beautiful. But yes, there definitely are, and I think most of them are either public groups or private, but you can join, just by request. The next march is going to be on the 26th of June in London as well, 1 o'clock. And they're all people are just saying, just bring one friend. If everyone brings one friend, that's immediately doubled. Can you imagine a march of, let's say if it was 1.5 million people, can you imagine a march of 3 million people through the streets of London? We would just shut it down. It'd be amazing. So even if every other person brings a friend,
I really loved how you said also that everyone that you saw, at least who was witnessing the march, was like cheering you guys on. They were in solidarity with you, even though they weren't marching. I just think that's amazing. I guess with the exception of the people in the masks on the island. But, that's kind of a great representation of, I think what's starting to happen is that people or at least in some areas, they're going to find out that they're the minority. They're going to find themselves standing on these islands with the other people wearing masks and seeing everybody else just kind of living their lives and expressing more love rather than fear. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And people really were, all of the cars we walked past, because we were literally walking past them, with 10 centimeters to spare, and people were rolling their windows down and giving us high fives and stuff like that, and it was just fantastic. And people were kind of going, honk your horn if you agree with us, and everyone was just beeping, and it was just mad, and every time somebody beeped, the whole crowd would cheer. And you'd hear them all the way down. So it's kind of like you'd hear a massive cheer. And then as you're walking on, you'd hear a cheer behind because they got to the same person or whatever, And it was great. And one person that was walking with me said something really interesting, in that he said, because the police were looking really hot. They had to wear their whole kit, with the fluorescent thing and the hat, and they had the mask on and everything. And they looked really hot, and they kept taking the masks off to drink water because they were struggling a bit, And the guy that was walking next to me said, that's a really, really good indication. Everyone who's marching is not wearing a mask, has not been wearing a mask, is eating healthier, they're looking after themselves, they're marching without sweating and breaking down and looking like the police did. And then look at these guys. They're wearing masks, they've been sedentary, they've not been looking after themselves, and they're really struggling. They can't even do this walk properly. And that I thought, wow, yeah, that's so true. Because the energy of this group, you would not believe. I mean, even at the end, 5 hours into marching, people were still dancing and singing and kind of waving their arms around, and people were spinning around. And every time a new song came on, people would just, cheer, and there were just cheers going all the way down the group. And it was just fantastic. The energy was really, really high. Even though we were knackered, I mean, all of us were kind of going, oh my God, my legs, oh my God, my feet, but still the energy was so high. And it was just, in some ways, as we were passing people who were supporting us, it was just kind of like, yeah, this is brilliant. We're not doing it just because this is what we believe in, but we're doing it for you guys as well. Not in an odd way or a kind of power hungry way, but it was more of a kind of, we're all the same. This is all about unity. So whether you're marching with us or you're not marching with us, you're agreeing with us. Woohoo, this is great. More and more people are doing this. It's fantastic. So it was like it brought more energy into the group, and it just felt amazing. And I think for me, round about, not only the march, but I think some of my experiences since have really helped me shift out of some judgments that I'd been feeling, or some rejection of judgments, because I'd realized, I mean, this is also doing a Ratima's healing school course, but doing some of the healing exercises that she's introduced, particularly the one at the moment, which I love, I'd seen or noticed that you expend so much energy holding judgment at bay, so it's like, I'm going to stop that from getting to me. No, I reject it. So I'm going to hold it really, really stiffly away from me. And whenever was it, today or yesterday, I can't remember now, but I noticed this and I kind of let that fall away. And it was like it was this really hard armor around me that I've been holding out really stiffly, when you start feeling your arms shaking because you're holding a weight so strongly. And that fell away. And suddenly, in that space where I'd been holding this armor that I'd thought was keeping it away from me and protecting me, it had actually been blocking love. When that fell away, suddenly so much more love flowed through, and I've been having some comments on Facebook from people who have different opinions to me, and inevitably there's some judgment there. And instead of, like in the past, I would once have sometimes felt a reaction coming up in me, or a kind of, well, no, that you're wrong, or whatever it is. Instead, I just felt more love for them. It was kind of like, oh, you disagree completely with me. Oh, I love you. Okay, you're telling me I'm completely wrong. Oh, that's lovely. Thanks. Kind of thing. It's just love is flowing instead, and I feel that it was a really significant realization for me that, that this armor that we hold up around ourselves, trying to stop judgment or trying to keep judgment at bay, is actually holding on to the judgment, so that the only thing that is keeping that judgment near us is us holding on to it and thinking, okay, I'm protecting myself against it. Instead, I'm using it to shut myself off from the world, So if you let that go, then judgment just flows through because it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And because you're not using all of that energy to hold it, this fear of judgment or trying to keep judgment away, then all the energy kind of goes back to what its natural state is, which is love, really, and it leaves all this space for love. So it feels like there's been a real stripping away for me this weekend, and it's beautiful. It's been an amazing weekend, very tiring in a number of ways, but really lovely. Yeah,
I had judgment coming up for me yesterday, or experiencing. It's almost like feeling the projection, me projecting the fact that I know someone has a judgment about me, like onto them, back onto me, because I went to a baby shower for my friend yesterday, and I know that there are people there that don't agree with what I believe, and it was just really an interesting experience of me feeling like I don't know what to do, like how to behave, because it's like we haven't seen each other since kind of all of these things have been happening, and like all these posts and everything. So it just kind of was a weird situation to be in, to feel like I don't know how to behave around this person. And it's just getting kind of like stuck in the mind, because it's like, well, I know they think this, or at some point they thought that, and it's all this expensive energy. And I was like, wow, I really wish I could just be in my heart about this. I found it very, very difficult, to kind of try to drop that. And it's a protective type of maneuver, right? Of being like, well, some sort of defense, I guess, which I didn't want to be there. And I felt quite sad about it. So I kind of sat with it after the fact because it was a little too much for me to move through at the current time of being there. And I do feel this sense of love there, just compassion of knowing this person. And the sadness, I guess, comes up in wanting there to be some sort of understanding. I don't know, just because things are so divisive right now that it feels like you can't be a normal person to somebody who holds views that are different than yours. And it's just really, really sad.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. It is sad. And I feel that all that we can do is not reflect that back, you know, because sometimes people have these really strong, I mean, some of the comments I was getting from family members were very strongly, you're wrong, you know, I've researched, you don't know anything. You know, it was comments like, you know, it's our responsibility to be careful about the things that we say, you know, meaning I should stop posting the kind of things that I'm posting. And in my reply, instead of getting aggressive or say something that was confrontational back, I just felt so much love from it was my sister, so much love for my sister. And I just wrote, well, yes, I agree. And we clearly have different points of view on what is true, and that's okay. And I really meant it. That is okay. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to fight you because I don't want to waste energy on fighting you. I don't want to waste energy on anything anymore that creates that solid armor or that barrier, you know, because now that that barrier has collapsed, and I'm not saying there won't be another one at some point, you know, now that barrier has just collapsed, I can see how much energy that used. And it's so nice not to have that constant strain or struggle. And I just really, really felt that, okay, you can say what you like, you can believe what you like. We've never really agreed in life anyway, but you know, we're not going to agree on this point. And okay, you think I'm judgmental and you think I'm this, and you know, you've said that your philosophy in life is to be compassionate and all of these things, and that's great. And you know, where once I'd have kind of gone, well, so where's the compassion in telling me I'm wrong? Where's the understanding of me being different by telling me I'm wrong? But this instead, I just went, no, it's fine. It's fine. You feel strongly enough about it to write something on my Facebook page. Fine. I'm not going to argue. That's fine. You know, and it felt very freeing just to kind of go, it's what it is. You know, it was kind of a, well, I can still love you even if you're different. And if you can't do that to me, that's okay. And if you do, that's great. But if you don't, that's okay too, you know. Because it's interesting, because all my life there's always been a very strong, well, I've never really fitted into my family. I've always kind of, you know, a lot of people feel like they're the black sheep, and I've always felt like I was the black sheep in my family, and there's never really been an understanding of what I am. But that seems to have fallen away now, and it's like, well, you never have understood me, so I don't know why I'm expecting you to understand me now suddenly in something that's so divisive, not just a normal family situation, you know. So that's fine, it's okay. And if it continues for life, okay, you know, that's how it will be, that's fine. And it's just nice, it's a real softening, you know, as opposed to that kind of hard edged tenseness. So yeah, so I'm glad that happened. Definitely.
Yeah, and for me, I did notice that there was a sense of respect for the other person, kind of like respecting the fact that there's a reason why they believe what they believe. You know, kind of just having a respect for their human experience, because what they've experienced has obviously led them to be where they are. So that it brings a sense of peace, you know, like as I do feel that as being true. And, you know, of course, my mind likes to look at things from all these different angles. I was like, okay, is there anything else I can pick out of this? So, of course, the thought comes up that, well, am I only, you know, coming up with reasons because I want to feel like they could love me too, like that sort of thing? And I'm like, I know that I still have things about, you know, being a nice person or wanting people to like me and stuff like that, but there's true senses in there that I really feel deeply that it's something that's real. I can feel it. You can probably see it on my face. Is that sense of respect is just something. It did open something in me of having respect for people's experiences, and that's what got them to where they're at, and it just is what it is. Some acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that that's really good. And I feel that that's something that needs to happen more and more in the world, in that to respect others as human beings, fellow human beings who have done the research they've done or they've had the experiences they've had to lead them to where they're at now, rather than having that blanket, no, you're wrong, because that's immediately divisive and immediately dismissive and immediately incredibly judgmental. It's being able to, I guess it's meeting them in love. It's like Aratima talks about meeting them where they're at and just being able to see them for who they are and still love them and still respect them and have a different opinion, and it ought to be fine. We need more of that in the world, because that's where all the violence and anger comes from. It's just that head-on collision of, no, I'm right and you're wrong, therefore I must crush you, kind of thing.
Right, and that's not going to change anybody's mind about anything. So.
No, exactly. And it's not representative. It's not a good representation of what you believe either, Peace and love, I'll smack you in the face.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But it does feel like, I mean, I know when you're in the energy of a big group, you definitely feel the energy of it, and it's kind of, it kind of feeds itself or it just radiates out. But it does feel like yesterday's march had a big impact energetically on London, at least, if not wider, just because that amount of good intent, that amount of love, that amount of radiating of wanting freedom for everybody, because it wasn't a selfish march. It wasn't I'm marching for me. It was I'm marching for me and others, so that amount of desire for freedom and peace and love must have had a really lovely ripple effect on London, and maybe the world. Mm-hmm. On a quantum level.
Yeah. I'm just find myself wondering, I'm like, I wonder when we're going to see that in the States, because we're at least not seeing it in the area that I'm in too much. I mean, I'm in New York, so what do I expect, really? But we do have the audits of the elections that are going on, so perhaps that's the channeling of the energy here, is the people going through the legislative process, and just trying to, maybe that's the movement of energy that's happening here, where it's being displayed in that way in London. So, because I'm like, what's going on? I'm not seeing much.
That'll be interesting to see how that turns out, though, the audits, what they uncover, what comes up.
Yep. I mean, all we can do is wait. I mean, I know that I have my notions about what I think is going to be uncovered, and I don't know what that's going to mean for how things are going to look if that does happen, because some people I imagine aren't going to be happy about it, where other people are going to be happy about it. So it'll be unprecedented times for sure. I mean, a lot of this is, right? What we're going through. So,
as you said, it's a different way. It's an outward expression, or it's kind of an action. It's taking action in whatever way that you take action. To express or to uncover or to bring light to something, so however that happens is a good thing. And I think in the US there have been marches in different places, not New York, but I think maybe Florida, and on the 15th I think I saw some posts. I think there was one in California that I saw, and maybe one in Florida, I'm not sure.
They had them in a bunch of places. They had one in someplace in New Jersey and another one in the city, actually, I think in New York. And they're just not things that I'm usually not comfortable going to the city anyway. So I was like, I just didn't feel like it was the right place for me to be, so to speak.
Fair enough. You have to feel that it's the right place for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was happy to see that those locations were on the list, I was like, okay, cool. Like there are, they're on there, Yeah.
But it does feel like it's all just an outward expression of the inner change that's happening, that people talk about, Aratima speaks about, and others talk about. It just feels very different. Things feel very different. I can't kind of intellectualize it, but it just feels like a big shift has happened or is happening, and it's just everything is coming up. And I can't really say more than that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It just seems kind of like, I guess, more of a movement of truth. People are just, there's some sort of courage or like this energy that, like you say, is coming up in people, and they're just like, you know what, I'm gonna do this, like whatever it is. It's like kind of like they're throwing off old patterns or old notions and just being like, no, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore. This is what I'm gonna do, and like kind of taking that step to either speak about things more openly or whatever it is. And it doesn't feel like that freedom fighter kind of energy though, like a very self-righteous thing, kind of like, I guess how you were saying before, being like, well, I'm gonna educate the world on this. It feels more like, no, I'm just gonna express what I believe is true because I feel like that needs to be put out there in the world.
And it feels like it's a real dropping of fear. So on the march yesterday, a lot of the chants were about not being fearful, stop being afraid, just feel the truth and follow your truth, and it does feel very much like that there's a dropping of fear. I feel it in myself too. So, it's part of this dropping of the judgment. I held onto that judgment shield, or that kind of reflecting away of judgment from myself field, out of fear, because there was a slight part, especially the judgment that comes from family, because you've grown up with it. Part of you believes that it must be true because your family believes that this is the person you are and they know you best. So of course it must be true, and that's really fallen away. And I hadn't realized I was holding on to it. I hadn't realized it was quite so ingrained, that belief that there must be something true about what they say. And yesterday and today, or whatever the falling away happened, I realized that no, none of it is true. And even if it is true, I don't have to accept it. It's just their perception. It's got nothing to do with me. So they can carry on thinking that I'm weird and difficult and aggressive and whatever else they want to think about me. Doesn't mean I'm that person at all. That's just how they see me. And that was really freeing, because it wasn't just a mental realization. It was a feeling in my belly. I really felt it in my body. And it feels like that's really happening at the moment. There's people standing up, taking a stand, stand up for your right, stand up for what is true. There has to be a fearlessness to it. You can't just kind of in your head go, oh, yeah, it's right and it's true, but I'm not going to say anything about it. I've seen a few posts about that as well. I think Kasri wrote a post. She was saying that she's getting a lot of messages from people all saying, I'm sick of this shit, I'm tired of it, but they don't do anything outwardly. So they don't go on marches, they don't post about it, they don't say anything. And it's all very well to believe something or feel something is true, but you have to live your truth. You have to stand for the truth. You have to walk in the truth. And you have to express that truth, because that's how it really becomes truth embodied in you, because otherwise it's just a thought. And if a thought doesn't have roots, it can be blown over by somebody else's opinion or somebody else's judgment. So as soon as somebody comes along whose opinion you think you honor or you respect, or somebody who, a family member whose opinion you're used to hearing, and they say, no, you're wrong, it's going to plant seeds of doubt. So that truth has to be really strong, and it has to have roots, and it has to have legs of its own to be able to stand up to that. So you can go, no, you're wrong. And that's okay. And I'm not defensive about it. So I'm not getting aggressive about it, because that means there's still that grain of fear. But if you're fearless, you can just very calmly say, no, you're wrong. And I don't have to justify myself to anybody. I don't have to say any more than that. I don't agree, because my truth says this is what's true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
yeah, I've been digging into that a little bit too recently, because, my dad's brother's a doctor, and he's like, we'll talk to him about the vaccine and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I know what I believe is true, and I really do feel that it's true. But I do find that there are certain edges sometimes that it's like, because it's like the normal thoughts of being like, well, what kind of evidence can I really provide? And I was like, but I kind of feel like it's a little bit beyond that, because I don't trust a lot of the research that's done. So if you put a paper in front of me, it's not really going to mean that much to me. It's like, well, who funded this? Who did the research? We don't really know anything about this study. Did this even happen? I mean, like, to really get out there on it. But I was just noticing those sorts of things, because it's like I will get, sometimes it's defensive, but other times for me, it's like, I feel like there's a bigger picture. It's like people try to compartmentalize things. So the conversation I was having with my dad, we were talking about the vaccines, and then I started talking about a little bit about like the death rates and, all that stuff. And he's like, well, that's not really, I was like, but it is part of it to me, because it's like, if the death rates weren't so inflated and they weren't so high, we wouldn't say we needed a vaccine in the first place. So I was like, to me, you can't separate it. It's all part of this big picture that's happening. And that's where the truth in it comes for me. It's like I just know these bits and pieces of different things that it doesn't make sense the way the pharmaceutical industry operates. It doesn't make sense that we don't have more nutrition, education, and more natural remedies available. And they're trying to get rid of more of them. I don't know if you've seen the post recently, but they're trying to, they want to make it so you can't get like concentrated aloe vera, curcumin, all this stuff, CoQ10. They want to take it away and make it something that you can only get through like the pharmaceutical industry. And none of that makes sense to me. So it's just like all different things like that have lined up throughout my life just support this belief that I have. So to me, it's a holistic thing, and that can be very difficult to explain to people because it's years and years and years of different things that I've learned or come across that have resonated with me as true, and being like, okay, well, this just makes sense, because why would the world operate this for any other reason? I don't know. That's where my truth comes from. And it's extremely difficult to try to explain that to people, especially when they're looking at their world through a different lens. Or my dad's, talking to his brother about him being a doctor, and he comes from a very research, this study says, this is how we understand this, and all of that. And I'm like, So I just need to know that, and I know it for myself, that that's the way that my truth has evolved, and that's how I register things as true. And it's just not going to be, it's not necessarily a perfect opposition. I'm not going to be able to come up with the exact facts and figures to combat, whatever my uncle happens to tell my dad. But I know what I believe is true. I have to be okay with that.
Yeah, but that's a better way of having that, knowing that truth, because it's an embodied truth. It's a truth that's built on many foundations. It's layers and layers. It's not just one paper that somebody's written. They've, may or may not have doctored the details, the facts and figures, the whatever, left bits out. You don't know. But I think you have to put your faith in truth itself rather than in science alone, or peer-reviewed whatever alone, or the government says this, or whatever it is. You have to have that resonance of truth. And so, like you were saying, things come in, they don't resonate as true, you don't believe them. They come in, you hear about it, resonates as truth, that's truth. And then there is enough documented evidence to back that up. But again, it's going back to that thing of no judgment, because if you're speaking to somebody who's judging you or holding up that shield of judgment because they believe that you're wrong, there's very little you can say that will convince them, because you can't break that shield. You have to get through the shield in order to be heard. And if they're holding that shield up against you because they want to believe that they're right and you're wrong, you might as well just say red dots, pink elephants, purple flies, because that's all they're going to hear, So I know there are certain things we can say that can influence people, but they have to be open to hearing what you're saying. And if they're not, why expend energy on arguing with people that don't want to hear anything you have to say? I'm not saying your dad, I don't know what he's like in that respect, but, I've had conversations with people like that where I can say, so the vaccine, and they go, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, I just said the words, the vaccine. Okay, you're very, very quick. Very good psychic skills there.
They're like, no, I know where you're going with this.
So I feel that this weekend, some of the learning that's really kind of sunk in deeper into my body or become more embodied is just the realization that it's all about love. So you just love, and whatever's true will come through, and it doesn't matter how it's received, and it doesn't matter what's said in response. That's all irrelevant. It's just being with that space of love and truth.
Yeah, I agree with you, though, and I think there's a aspect of accepting, where you're at in your journey of truth as well. Because for me, like, yeah, I do have certain things come up, and I'm like, wait, why do I believe this? And I kind of have to go back and reconfigure my thought process. But it's being able to be with that experience, because I do see that still some resistance in me, where it's not just okay that my truth is my truth, but like I have to, be able to express it to other people. I have to help them to understand it, if they ask me about it and things like that. So I can look at that. If I can look at that and accept, like, okay, there is, a crack in this foundation, and just be with it instead of trying to fix it, then it does allow for that space of more truth to come in. Because it's like later, maybe, something will float through my head and be like, oh, right, I remember I came across that once, and that really registered as true for me. and it kind of like fills in that gap. Or, you might hear something and then it's like, right, okay, yeah, that was it. And it's just allowing for that movement instead of holding on so tightly. It's like the right and wrong thing, I guess. It's like wanting to be right so much that it's like you're actually crumbling the foundation that you're trying to stand on, because you're just trying to find things that are in alignment with that, instead of allowing and saying, no, there does seem to be a gap here, and allowing something to come in and fill that gap, regardless of whether you think it's in alignment with what you believed before. Yeah.
And I feel like, I think you mentioned this in the last podcast or the one before, I can't remember, where you're saying that when you hear somebody talk about their own personal experience, or basically their version of what is true, their truth, they speak their truth, you feel it, you know it, and it's that same sense. You know it when somebody's speaking truth. So in some ways, let's say if somebody says, I had an experience of, I had a really horrible reaction, bad reaction to the vaccine, and this happened. They don't have to produce statistics and numbers. The fact that they're saying it happened, and it's their truth, you'll know and you'll believe it, you'll feel it, So I feel that need, and I understand it because I used to have it more strongly. I feel that maybe it's fallen away this weekend, but that need to justify yourself, because I grew up with a very scientific dad, so he's always kind of, well, where's your evidence kind of thing. There was that need to, well, I have to justify what I'm saying and believing. It can't just be because I feel it, because, that's just too namby-pamby, Or I can't say I know it. He'd be like, well, how do you know it? And it's like, well, I just know it's true, and that's not enough, But now, these days, it's like, well, so what? If people need evidence, then they'll have to go elsewhere, because I'm not going to be able to give them facts and figures. I don't have that kind of brain. But I can point them in the direction of people who have that kind of brain. But for me, it's like, well, if you come to me for my opinion, I'll give you my opinion in the way that my opinion is. And if you want, in 1972, this happened, and then the day, well, go somewhere else, go and look, there's a historian over there who believes whatever. But I think there's that fearlessness with that as well. So there's no judgment of yourself, or no judgmental aspect of yourself going, well, I can't truly believe it, or I can't be in truth if I can't justify it in the way that person looking at me feels that I should be able to. It's like, well, fuck them. If you want that, go somewhere else. I'm not going to provide it for you.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, it's another layer, right, of judgment versus acceptance, accepting that this is the way that you experience the world. This is how you prove things are true for yourself. And, some people will resonate with that and other people won't, and they'll have to go to another source if they want to still look for certain types of information. And like you said, you can always point them in that direction, because there are reasons, right? Things that we've come across that we believe in what we do. We're not alone. We know other people also believe it. So the information's got to be there somewhere, right? So...
yeah. And I think it can say a lot about the other person. I mean, like, for example, on my Facebook page, where my cover is one of the signs that I saw at the last march, which says love wins, because I love it. I love that message. It's fantastic. And then I'd written a post that somebody had friended me or sent me a friend request on Facebook, and I'd gone to check out their page, because you do, just in case they're not the kind of person you want to accept, because there's a lot of divorced men looking for wives out there. But, yeah. This woman had her cover said "fuck Biden," and so in my post I'd gone, oh yeah, well I didn't have to see much past that to accept the friend request, because I knew where she stood, And my aunt, who I'm not even friends with on Facebook, said, oh, so in inverted commas, love wins, does it, Kim? Lol. And that was supposed to be a really humorous comment, but it was actually very barbed and judgmental, because she's basically criticizing me for being hypocritical and saying love wins, but still saying that fuck Biden is an acceptable thing to say. So I just replied and said, yes, it does. I don't know why you put inverted commas around your judgment, which is a little bit harsh. But it was that kind of thing of like, well, you're using your definition of what you believe a loving person should be and putting that on me. I don't accept that at all, because I think you can still be love. You can still believe that love wins and accept that fuck Biden is a completely acceptable thing to say.
Right.
The two aren't mutually exclusive. And you don't know what he's done. I mean, look into it. If you want to know why people say fuck Biden, do some research. Anyway, but it's just that kind of thing, people projecting all sorts of shit. And you don't have to stand for it. You just have to go, no. My definition of love is different to yours. I don't have to justify my definition of love. I don't have to explain why. I don't have to explain anything. And I'm just going to carry on with my life. So carry on.
Excellent.
It's kind of like, well,
Really does feel good now, though. that kind of shift into, because it's really being very neutral, right? And it just completely diffuses the situation. You don't have to argue with anyone. It just is what it is. It's like really that truth. It is what it is. So it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters.
Yeah. Exactly.
That was our conversation around the march that Kim attended on May 29th, 2021 for freedom. We also spoke about judgment and how acceptance can be a great tool to go beyond judgment, self-acceptance, and acceptance of others. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave us a like, comment down below. How are you feeling? Is it today a good day for you? Just write anything. Hit that bell button and subscribe so you'll be notified for our next podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.